the women's basketball has been more exciting, at least I'm say the last few years, than the men's side. I've talked about this ad nauseum. I put a clip out just last episode that it's easier and it's more exciting to follow the women's game this year than it is the men's because of the names that they have. Whether we talk about Camila Cardozo, whether we talk about Cameron Brink, whether we talk about Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Anissa Morrow. There is so many names that you can attach yourself to and teams that you can attach yourself to. And on the women's side, the number ones are South Carolina, Iowa, USC, and Texas. I talked about parity on the men's side. There isn't much parity on the women's side. And it's very because there are just teams, coaches that are better than others. You do see them sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it never happens, but you don't really see too much upsets in the women's basketball. I think the biggest upset in recent memory was a couple years ago when Stanford lost, I think in like the second round. And why that was so shocking and so surprising is because, again, you do not see a lot of upsets in women's college basketball because the talent at the top is just so much better than the rest that it kind of works itself out. I will say this, though. When you look at the landscape of the women's side of the college basketball region or regions, there is a lot more good teams than there is bad teams. Like, there's usually great teams and then okay to bad teams. Now it's great teams and good teams. Now, I know that like, Jalen, what are you talking about? Just hear me out, man. Just hear me out. Okay, I'll give you a prime example. Texas is playing Driscoll the first matchup. I obviously have Texas winning. But Driscoll isn't a bad team. They're a good team. They're just not on Texas level. Texas is a great team. San Diego State is a really good team. Utah is a really good team. So I just, you don't see a lot of upsets. You don't see there's not as much parity as you think. Usually the best teams or the best players essentially win in the women's side. And when you look, the number one seeds definitely deserve to be the number one seed. South Carolina is South Carolina. Don Staley is the best coach in college basketball, in my opinion. The way that they're able to lose, I mean, you lost to Leah Boston last year, who was obviously the best player in college basketball. You come back, and not only are you essentially probably better this year than you were last year, you haven't lost a game. Now, yes, their games aren't as blowouty as they've been, but they're still incredible. So South Carolina being the number one overall seed, it kind of feels like the same. I kind of feel the same way about South Carolina as far as their dominance and their road to the national championship. How I feel about UConn on the men's side, it's going to be incredibly tough to beat them. Iowa has the best player. Caitlin Clark is the best player in women's college basketball by a long shot. She is going to be the number one overall pick in the WNBA draft. And while I will say this, it's not just Caitlin Clark. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think when people hear Iowa basketball, all they think of is Caitlin Clark, and rightfully so. Like, she is obviously their best player. But they obviously the players aren't as good as Caitlin Clark. I will say that, but there are other people. You know, Hannah Suwecki. I know I said your name wrong. I apologize. She's pretty good. Kate Martin is pretty good. Like they have some pieces. They're Caitlin Clark averages 31.9 points a game. That is incredible. So they definitely deserve to be a 1 seed. Texas has been great as well. They are probably one of the most balanced teams in college basketball. They can beat you. They're probably one of the best scoring teams also in college basketball. Texas definitely deserves to be a 1. It was sort of a bumpy road, and I do think that in that region it's going to be tough for them because Stanford also deserves to be number 1 with Cameron Brink, but they lost late in the season, and that kind of hurt them. And I think Texas has a tough road, man. You have to go against Florida State. You have to go against Utah. You have to go against Tennessee, possibly. NC State. Maryland is a very underrated 10 seed. And yeah, it's going to be tough. But Texas has been consistent throughout the year, so shouts out to them. And USC is one of they have arguably the second best scorer in women's college basketball, and that's Juju Watkins. For her to be a freshman doing what she's doing, scoring the way she's scoring, it definitely is. It's awe inspiring. I will say that. So the number one the number 1 seeds are definitely deserving of number 1s, and I don't really there's not really much negative I can say about them because of just how great they've been all year. Now I will say that again, they are each let me move forward. Each bracket has it's going to be tough throughout this entire region. You have one of the best scorers in college basketball at Syracuse, and they're the 6th seed. You also have UConn at the 3. It's going to be tough, but kind of like the men's side, there's always a team or two that underachieve. There's always a team or two that should be better than they are or should have a good shot of advancing, and they don't. And on the men's side, I looked at Marquette and I looked at Kansas. On the women's side, I'm looking at Georgia Tech. I love like Virginia. When you look at the makeup of Virginia Tech, they have 2 great players in Elizabeth Kitley and Georgia Amore, and then everyone else are pretty good. The issue is we've seen too many times this year, if you take Elizabeth Kitley or you take Georgia Amore out the game, which people have been able to do, they have nowhere else to go. And Georgia Amore averaging 19 points a game, she can shoot the hell out the ball. And Elizabeth Kitley averaging 23 points a game, she dominates the paint. But again, if you take them, which we've seen on a few occasions, if you take them out the game, they have nowhere else to go. And we've also seen games where Georgia Amore struggled if she's not hitting shots or she's not getting assists, it's a long day for Georgia or Virginia Tech. A long day for Virginia Tech. I think that they'll be really good, and I'll give my prediction on how far they can make it a little bit later. But Georgia Tech, they're so reliant on 2 players. It's crazy. Kind of like Iowa. Iowa is so reliant on Caitlin Clark scoring as much as she can score. That could be problematic if she has a bad game. Now, again, her bad games seemingly are like triple doubles, but it could be a long day for a team like Georgia Tech, a team like Iowa, a team like Notre Dame, an incredibly young team. Hannah Hidalgo is one of the best scorers in college basketball, especially seeing as though she's a freshman. But if you're able to bog her down, Sonia Citron is good too, but it really goes through Hannah Hidalgo, and this is a small team. Like I don't know. I can see teams that are kind of have one or two dominant scores, like Virginia Tech, like Notre Dame, like Iowa, like USC and Juju Watkins. There, I can see them struggling when they're going up against a team that is a little bit more balanced than them. Don't get me wrong. I can obviously see every single one of those teams make a deep playoff run. And again, I'll give my predictions on where each team could possibly fall. But teams that are so dependent on one or two scores, especially on the women's side where the game is a little more balanced than the men's side, it can definitely cause issues, and it can definitely be concerning when you're going up against a team that is able to spread you out and that is able to lock down on your one or two best players, and other people have to do things that they're not used to doing. So those are those teams where I'm just like, I don't know, man. I could see a long road for them. That's all I'm saying. And that is, like I said, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Iowa, USC, those type of teams. So, oh man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.